What were some of the trade-offs that you were not willing to make?
I think one of them was putting all business needs first in terms of what commanded my physical time. So I am a very delegating type of leader. I build up the capability of my team so that we have collectively more bandwidth, because if we take on great challenges and we've got a really strong bench, then, multiple players can come in to achieve something. And I don't have a hierarchical style either when it comes to, going to some spotlight event or some crucible meeting. So I was trying in my own universe with my team that I was managing at the time, where if there was a trip that I felt someone on my team was incredibly capable of leading because I had, trained them, they were very strong, they had a good relationship with the customer, I would try to send them on the trip. If I had, something going on where I needed to stay home, it was this hierarchical norm of like, no, your title is X and therefore you have to go. And I was just challenging, like, why? Like, this person is perfectly capable. And the assignments that I was looking at in the future, I remember one conversation in particular, my responsibility had grown to a very large amount, partly because I sign up for work, which, is another topic, but I had a huge scope of responsibility that started the year very tumultuous. Half of that scope was not delivering and my job was to turn that around. And by the end of that year, I had green shoots on everything on my business. Not only that, some of those green shoots were the first green shoots, brands on my portfolio had seen in 8-10 years. And the feedback was, this is phenomenal and you're such high potential and, you're such an asset to this organization. And, as someone who had worked, 2-3x the scope of my peers and delivered results, I asked the question of, if I get another year like this, what's next for me, right? Every year you have these career check-ins just to make sure that, what you want in the company assessment of how you're performing to qualify for what you want. I was asking that question, wanting to make sure that I was doing everything I needed to do so that I was laying that groundwork for what the next level would be, not necessarily the next day, but in, 18 to 20 more months time, a pretty reasonable schedule. And the response I got was basically, regardless of how I performed, there were boxes I was going to need to check, roles I was going to need to take, scope I was going to need to take to advance to a next level. And even though qualitatively in my day to day, I was already starting to check those boxes, the broader, machine of it all, had a more systematized way and almost like quantitative way of determining whether or not you had checked a box or not. And it was enlightening to me that there was more of an optics game than I understood, less of a meritocracy than I had been trying to push for. And then I realized now again at this different level that there's a little bit of a box checking that would require me to move to places I wasn't necessarily interested in, move to places that weren't compatible with my personal needs. And I actually appreciate the transparency because I didn't waste another, 5 or 10 years where I was. But just those dynamics of, doing kind of all the things you need to be doing and yet still needing to do more, that then starts to come into conflict with your own goals and wishes, recognizing that for what it is, and then determining if you're going to do something about it and then taking action on that. It was a big lesson for me that I'm glad I recognized at the moment and then took action upon.